Hello everyone, good morning. My name is Wei Hao, and here I have with me Jimmy. Now, we live in a digital data-centric era, yet a lot of process we have today hasn't gone completely digital, and there is a reason for it. For a substantial amount of these processes, the data sources are still deeply non-digital and non-structured. I am, of course, talking about data coming from documents. Now, one good example of such processes is documentary trade finance. Of course, as the name suggests, this particular process is still very, very paper-based. Now, this is an example of what we see in document trades. So this is a bill lading from the carriers, and then we have the commercial invoices from the transaction itself, and finally, a certificate of origins for certifying the goods that's actually involved in these transactions. And there's a lot more. Now, each of these documents plays a very important role in the entire trade ecosystems. And to process them is a very difficult and very challenging task, mainly because that these documents are really non-structured in nature. Now, today, I'm going to share with you a story of how we can effectively go about processing this document, these non-structured documents that's coming from this very analog basis. So here we have actually a more complete set of documents that actually represents a full set of transactions. So we actually subject this, firstly, to intelligent capture. Of course, prior to this demo, we have already trained the system to understand what trade documents are, and then we actually incorporate quite a few rules and even machine learnings. Now, on the left-hand side, what you see is actually the audit trail that's recording real-time what the system is actually doing on the transactions. Now, let's take a look. The very first step the system performs is actually document classification, all right, a document identification. Now, this is not just done by reading the document title from each of them, but actually allowing the system to read through every single words, reading the content, and thus classifying contents based on what the system already understands. So once you know what the document is, then you know what to do with the documents. So after identifying the documents, the system go ahead and trigger a series of searching and locating the information, very much like what a human would do. Now, these are, of course, built based on existing logic and previous machine learning. So, of course, as you have guessed, we've used a couple of neural-enabled capabilities for the system to read the documents very much like a human. So after reading the documents, it goes forth and getting all the necessary information, extracting information, and you see one particular line over here that's interesting. It says sanction screening. Now, we'll come back to this topic a little bit in a while, so I don't want to break the flow over here. And further down, it wraps up by running a rule engines. So obviously, rule engines can be highly customizable. So in this case, we actually base the rules on UCP 600 standards. So after running everything through here, the bulk of data has been captured already. Now, I know that I said that this is intelligent capture. Regardless of how intelligent a system is, the data that's captured can never be 100% perfect. So we need a data checker along the way. So how do we go about doing this data checker? So I'd like to introduce a new concept over here, new and optional concept, crowdsourcing. Why don't we open up data checking to everyone, to anyone? Now, immediately that raised a lot of questions. Is this actually secured? What about the breach of data confidentiality? Now, allow me to bring you through this very slowly. So we put in place RPA process, robotics. In this demo, we script the robots to basically crop out images out from the documents based on what it learned previously, and then upload it to our crowdsourcing platform, all right? So I'll have Jimmy trigger the robots. So what you see over here is that based on the previous capture process, the robots knows exactly where the fields of the information are on the documents. And it went ahead to crop out all these images and upload them accordingly to the crowdsourcing platform. So right now, I'm going to ask Jimmy to log in into the crowdsourcing platform as one of the data checker being. So of course, as the upload actually takes some time, we have already pre-prepared some of the snippets on the platform itself. Now, and this is all Jimmy sees, okay? Other than the characters he sees, he doesn't know what this is for. He doesn't know what's the context of it. He doesn't know the field name. Maybe he can guess the field name. But more importantly, he doesn't know which transaction this particular image snippet belongs to. And what's remarkable is that Jimmy may not even be belonging to this trade team at all. So he could be anyone. So this particular action over here has completely reduced the documents in terms of security, only reviewing what was needed to be typed out. Now, this information, once typed out or once confirmed by the checker, information is consolidated back to the main system, and the system will perform some level of comparison. Now, I promised to go back to the topic of sanction screening. Now, sanction screening is a very important aspect of trade document processing. It is mandatory, actually. So we are not here to replace, of course, any sanction system, but we are complementary to it. Now, like any human, when you go through document, you are bound to find information or data that is suspicious in nature, right? So, for example, risky goods, countries that you're not supposed to trade with, and things like that. So because we are already reading all the documents, or we have all the data, there's nothing stopping us from just going through the data, using some of our new technologies, like, for example, a fuzzy algorithm to match it against the database. Now, we have a database in place now. This database can, of course, be of any type. Now, you see on the screen over here on the left-hand side, there's green color highlighting. Now, these green color highlighting actually are all the words that's being screened by systems. Every single word, every single phrases, and every single combinations. So these words will be picked up by the system, and the system will perform a match to the backend. There are two screenings that's done actually in this screen, right? Now, of course, this screen was actually built for demo purposes. In reality, we do not actually require the screen. This is something that's automated, that's running behind the scene. Now, the first screening that's taken by the system is actually a database fuzzy search. So this database, as mentioned, it can be anything. So it can be a blacklist database, an OFAC database, and it can even be just a simple risky goods database. All the system is doing, going through every single word on the left-hand side and trying to find a fuzzy corresponding value on the database itself. So it doesn't have to be a complete match, as you can see on the top right-hand corner of the words there. So we have identified candidates, and then we have identified the features, or rather the records in the database itself. As long as there's a close resemblance, it's enough for the system to flag it out and send it to the sanction system. And bottom, we are doing screening using natural language processing, the ability to pick up all the entities. So all these data are actually being sent to the backend. So at this point, when the data is completed by the crowdsourcing, it gets consolidated, and if there's exception, only at this point will it be reviewed to the operators for further processing. Now, we have attempted to explain the entire process within a very short time, so obviously I've missed out quite a lot of details. If you're interested to know more, do look for us at our booth. Thank you very much. Thank you.